You started writing How to Stop Time, somehow inspired by your other book, The Humans. You said a book about human lives, small but extraordinary in the context of the universe. So without making a spoiler for those who haven't read the book yet, what does How to Stop Time stand for you?
Well, How to Stop Time is it's a book about time. It's imagining a lot of things that I think about, but my idea was that to have this very, very old man, he's 439 years old, would be a useful way to explore lots of ideas about love, about grief, about exploring the world, about how we choose to cope with things. So a lot of my own experience of being ill when I was younger with depression and things like that, a lot of that came into this book. But having said that, it was probably the most fun I've ever had writing a book, because I was just having lots of adventures and traveling the world and in my head, you know.
Was it difficult to write from this point of view, as you mentioned your childhood experience with depression?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult for lots of reasons, but mainly it was difficult because I had to do a lot of research. Normally I don't do much research for my books, but this was historical, so it was very hard in terms of the work because it was 12 different historical periods, so it was a lot of research. Other than that, it wasn't difficult in terms of being painful or autobiographical like that, because after writing the book Reasons to Stay Alive, that got all that out, so I was okay, I was alright.
Indeed, you mentioned the research. How did you actually choose the time periods and the happenings in the book?
Well, sometimes it was because I had to for the story, and other times it was just me having fun. So, you know, Paris in the 1920s, that was just because I wanted to go to Paris in the 1920s.
Really? You did? Really? Wow.
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
I knew, because he's 500 years, well, he's 439 years old, so I couldn't go everywhere. And I didn't want to do like a diary of his life, because that would be a very long book. And so I chose one period every 100 years. Every century there was a different period. So sometimes it was for the story, like the stuff where he travels the world with Captain Cook, and he goes to the South Pacific, to Tahiti and everything. That was totally for the story, because I didn't want to do 500 years of England, of London. I wanted to make it about the world and about scale of time and scale of place. But yeah, generally, my only principle in writing this book was to really enjoy writing an adventure story, to sort of just discover the thrill again of being a writer, because sometimes you lose that, because this was like my 13th book or 14th book, so I've written quite a few books now, so I wanted it to feel like a first novel again.
You wanted to explore. I particularly like the choice of the. There's a scene where the main character, the narrator, and his mother have to deal with witchcraft and all that. All that period that was really harsh somehow, and at the same time very richful in meaning. How did you? How did you stop at this one, at this particular choice?
Well, I thought he was going to be born in Elizabethan times, in 1500s, because I thought if he was any older, if he was like 2,000 years old, that becomes too unbelievable. And I wanted to make sure he was younger than some real living things. So, for instance, there are sharks that they've discovered that are 1,000 years old in Greenland, these Greenland sharks. There are clams. Do you know what a clam is? That they've discovered that's 504 years old. So I made him a little bit younger than some living things. So that meant he was born around sort of Shakespeare time, the witch trial kind of time. And that's my favourite period of history anyway, because I don't know, I think culturally it was interesting. There was a lot of bad stuff going on, but there's a lot of exciting things going on in the arts, because you had Shakespeare and all the Elizabethan playwrights, and they were doing their stuff for everybody, not just for the sort of highbrow elite people, it was for the general public. And it was, the witchcraft stuff, I felt that was quite similar to a lot of stuff we have today. Obviously we don't have witch trials, but we still have stigma about things. A lot of people who are stigmatized for their identity, or they're stigmatized for their health. And certainly on the health side, that was something I've always related to. The idea that anything that's different is seen as something to be scared of, or something that has to be explained in some malevolent way.
So we have a character that is over 400 years old. My question is, did you learn anything new about time during writing this book?
Yes, I think so. I think that's why I write books. I write books to discover new things and to discover new things about myself. I've always been obsessed with time though since my 20s, because depression and anxiety and illness made me think about time. Because even though I'm just 42 years old, after 3 years of depression, I felt 500 years old. You know, it was so. Those 3 years where I was very ill are still like longer than half of my life. You know, it's still a long experience. So I think anyone who's gone through pain experiences that feeling of time slowing down. And so there was a lot of that I sort of knew anyway and was bringing to it. But it made me more accepting of life and getting older, because I'm a hypochondriac, so I always worry that I'm going to die of something. Every week I have a new illness.
What illness do you have now?
Exactly. I'm dying from about 3 things right now. I'm a nut, but I always worry about everything. But to imagine someone who has lived for centuries and actually feeling that being immortal or nearly immortal wouldn't be that good, that was quite therapeutic for me.
Okay, and you mentioned the relationship between love, death, time, and life in your book. And why is it important to you, this kind of narrative?
Well, I think nowadays a lot of books, and they're great books, but there's a lot of books that are encouraged to be narrow and focus on one topic. So you have thriller stories, you have love stories, you have serious literary stories here and there. And I because I was writing a little bit about Shakespeare, I wanted to do that thing of just putting everything in. So I like books that explore big themes, and I think the idea, when I know an idea is the right one, it's when it's the most useful way of exploring something. So before this book, I wrote a book called The Humans, which was about an alien coming to Earth. And I'm not really interested in aliens, but it was a great way of looking at human beings and looking at us as if we were sort of animals in a nature documentary. And this was the same thing, taking someone who was almost human, but different to us. It was a better way of looking at our own weird ways.
Would you consider this book a thriller? Is it a thriller for you?
It's got little bits of a thriller. I think if you were a reader of if you wanted a straightforward thriller, you would be a bit disappointed in this book. It's not really. It's got elements of it. I mean, it's got a bad guy. It's got a very sort of bad guy in it. It was my sort of James Bond villain, Hendrik, leader of his society. But it's not really a thriller. I mean, I don't even think of it really as a pure sort of love story. It has got a love story in it. But in Britain, it was nominated for the best romantic novel of the year. So I went there and I just thought, well, I was the only man in the whole place. I'm apparently the only romantic man in England.
You were confused, right?
Yeah. So I felt like I was like the Lionel Richie.
That's very funny.
But no, I don't know. As you may notice, I'm very bad at describing quickly what my book is about, because I sort of want it to be big enough to sort of throw everything in I'm thinking of in that day. So I don't like genre titles because they kind of limit you a little bit.
Do you have a favorite thing about time?
Well, I'm really bad at time because I never live in the present moment. So I would love a way of living in the present moment. One of the ways I find I can understand time a bit better is just this act of writing. It's almost like meditation, because I find it hard to relax sometimes. And I can't actually meditate, but writing is the closest thing. And I think that's, you know, to be in that state of not thinking about time, not worrying about the future. Because obviously, even though my book is called How to Stop Time, we can't technically stop time, but we can stop worrying about time and worrying about the past and the future, and just being more like how animals live, you know, just in the present moment.
How do you write? Do you have any habits as a writer? Do you write in a particular place? Or
No, I need a better routine, but generally I write more in the morning. I'm not very good late in the day, and I write a lot of words when I'm near the end of a novel, but at the start it's a struggle. I have like 4 Word documents open on my computer, and I switch between each document, and because I can't decide what to write, and then I have whole days of not writing anything, so I'm not the best at routine.
And is there something that annoys you about writing?
Yes, almost everything. Editing. I hate editing. I like the first draft. At a point, the first draft is lovely and beautiful, and then editing is when it feels like work. Because often in your head, you've moved on to your next story or your next thing, and then you get the email from your editor telling you how terrible your book is, and you like about 25 pages of criticism, because editing is just criticizing, and so you then have to go through and realize how bad your first draft was, and then make it better, and it just goes on forever. I mean, it's still better than everything else. It's still better than a real job.
How many drafts did you have for How to Stop Time? Do you remember?
I had about, it wasn't too bad, it's not my worst one. I had about 4 or 5 serious drafts, and then little.
Do you have a favorite scene in the novel?
Well, as I say, I like the stuff in Paris. I think the best section, the best historical bit for me is the Elizabethan stuff and the witch trials and his romance with Rose, because that sort of shapes it all. But I like writing the contemporary stuff as well. 1920s Hollywood, there's a little chapter in 1920s Hollywood. I like that.
When you write, do you pay more attention to the timeline or to the words, or how, what motivates you when creating a story?
It's difficult. I think what motivates me and what keeps me writing is the point where you get the whole book in your head and you haven't written it, and so you're sort of in a rush before you forget it all to write as much as it's possible, and then it becomes like an addiction, and you want to you want to finish it, and then it becomes a sentimental. And I don't know, I think I like writing because it sort of takes you out of your head, even though people think that reading and writing is for introverted people and it takes you inside. I think the opposite. I think it's about sort of heading out of yourself, especially with fiction. So I just like the whole daydream of it, really.
You also write children's literature. Do you make a shift when writing adult fiction and children's books?
Yeah, it's different, but every book is different anyway. Writing for children is fun. What I like about writing for children is that children will accept. You can write the most fantastical, strange, weird story, and children will just go with the daydream and it's strange. With adult readers, even though they have broader vocabularies, their imaginations are much sort of smaller. So children, in a way, are the best readers.
Did you talk to them? I mean, do you speak with them do you meet your children readers?
Well, I have to do, every Christmas, I do a tour of schools around the country, which is even less fun than editing. Because it's like 600 children every single time, and 2 times a day. And so you have to be like, crazy, but the children. Yeah.
But you like it, right?
But I've got children. I have children of my own, and so that's useful. So I can, they can read bits as I go.
Do they read your books before them being published? No.
Some read bits of them, but no, they try not to, because for the ones I've written, the last 3 books were all Christmas books. The children, so they read them at Christmas.
Okay. You openly spoke about your depression, much so to our inspiration. What is the most valuable lesson you learned while struggling with depression and the years that followed?
There's so many lessons. I mean, there are lots of things. I wrote the book Reasons to Stay Alive almost as a letter to myself when I was younger, all the things I wished I'd known. I think one of the things that's so important now for me to understand is that when I become ill, because I can still become ill, I still have anxiety sometimes or depression, is to know that it won't last. When you first become ill, you think this is it forever, and the illness makes you feel like that. And even now, even like if you've had it like 19 or 20 times and you've got out of it 19 or 20 times, you still feel like, it could be forever when you're in it. So I think just knowing that it isn't forever, and also, I think one thing that got me better was to stop worrying about getting better, if that makes sense. So I used to be obsessed about being 100% perfect and well in my head. And as soon as I stopped worrying about that and not having to be the sort of strong, tough person, it made life easier when I was kinder with myself about it.
How did you make the courage to speak openly about depression?
It took me a long time. It took me 10 years. I had to feel very different to who I was when I was ill. And also, the book, Reasons to Stay Alive, was the only book I've written which I'd been asked to write by someone else. I had a friend who asked me to write the book. And without that, I don't think I would have done. But when I actually started writing about it, it was very easy. It was very fast, and I wrote it very quickly, and it didn't feel painful. Everyone thinks, it would be painful to go back, but when you've had depression, it's kind of always there, so it just feels like letting go more than anything.
Is Reason to Stay Alive one of your favorite books, or not necessarily? I mean, do you hold it dear to you because of this story?
Yeah, genuinely, honestly, I don't think it is necessarily my best book, but it is probably the book that, if I could only have one book that exists, I would say that, because it has been useful to some people. So I think I would say Reasons to Stay Alive is the one book that I would keep in publication. But, you know, when I look at it now, there are things I would do differently about it and stuff, but I had no idea when I was writing it. Like in my country, in England, it was quite a big book. It was a sort of #1 book and stuff. But no one, my publishers, me, no one thought it was going to be a big book.
Why is that?
Well, I think because it was called Reasons to Stay Alive, and because it was very much about depression and suicide, there weren't that many, you know, there were books about that subject, but they were just for people who were feeling very suicidal or something. No, but a lot of people who read Reasons to Stay Alive aren't depressed, but they just want to understand about it and to see what sort of depression and recovering from depression can teach you about life in general. But we didn't know that. And it was very strange, and it happened very naturally, you know, people talking about it, and it, yeah, agree. I also thought people wouldn't want to go into a shop and ask for Reasons to Stay Alive, because I thought that would just be like walking into a shop and saying, I'm depressed, I'm suicidal.
It's going to be translated in Romanian as well next year. This is why.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay. Are you're not planning to come to Romania for the book launch, maybe?
I feel really bad just being there by Skype, because I wanted to be here, but 1 week ago, I'd been for a month in America. I knew I was having this month book tour in America, and I came back, and I know with me, if I do too much traveling around, that's one of the things that makes me a bit ill in my head. But I in a normal time, when I haven't had a month away, I would love to come. So I haven't got it in my diary to come, but if I'm invited back, I'll come.
Okay, I'm sure you will be. What contemporary literature do you read, and or have you read lately? And what do you think the importance of literature is in today's chaotic world?
I've read lots of. Well, when I was writing How to Stop Time, I was reading a lot of history books. So now I'm back into reading novels again. But they're not necessarily new novels. I'm reading The Great Gatsby for like the 15th time in my life, so that's not very. I read a book, I think it's published in Romania, called Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, who's a sort of Asian American writer, which is very good. What else? Do you have Yuval Noah Harari, the Israeli writer?
No, I don't think so. No, it's not.
It's non-fiction. It's very, very good. He wrote a book called *Sapiens*, which is about the history of human beings. And so I've been reading some of his stuff. Generally, I think there are a lot of, I don't know what Romania is like, but a lot of Europe and a lot of America, there's a lot of promising signs about books. And, you know, certainly like when I was in America last month, they were opening bookstores, a lot of new bookstores coming out, a lot of people wanting to read paper again, not just on sort of Kindles. And I think the internet age now is making books more valuable, because people want something that isn't the internet, that isn't a computer. And they want a retreat and a place to think away from all the noise and all the news and, you know, Donald Trump and this, that and the other. You know, they want something else.
Does it also, I mean, do you believe it also contributes to the shaping of the society in a way, or not necessarily? It's more of an escapism in a good way. In a good way.
I think so. I think it can be both those things. I think you can discover things about the world through escaping, and like, you know, I want my books to be an escape, but also a way of standing back and getting perspective on life. And I think we need that perspective more than we've ever needed perspective, to have another space that isn't the technological space, that's the space away from the immediacy of politics, a sort of thoughtful space, because we're very much in a world of breaking news and new information all the time, and Twitter and Instagram and everything. And I think it was nice to have an area, like a park of our minds, where we can go and reflect.
That's beautifully said. And last question before we take some questions from the public. Well, it's not a question actually. It's like, quick, tell us 3 reasons to stay alive.
Oh my God! Oh no! Okay. Well, life is good. Even when it's not good, it's good. I think what I always say, because I have some very sort of serious, you know, seriously ill people ask me this and stuff, but I think there might not be, in that immediate moment in time, there might not be, you might not have the reason, but what you're doing is you'd be destroying all the other lifetimes you've got ahead. I don't think you are one person for your whole life. I think there's so many variations of one person, and there's so many different versions of us. And very few of us were literally depressed from the day we were born. We've all had some kind of meaningful experience in our past. And so when you fall into that hole, you have to know that there are other meaningful experiences. You're not going to stay in that bit. But when you're at the bottom of the valley, you have the worst view, so you can't see. So you have to sort of wait, and you have to understand its weather. And you know, so even if it feels like you have no one, or you have no job, or there is literally nothing you can see around you that gives your life meaning, it won't always be the same. It's not like life is this flat line forever, you know, and we change. No one is the same as they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. That was probably, how many reasons was that?
One.
Okay. Music.
Music and?
Books.
And books.
Reading.
Great. Thank you so much. This was lovely, and we're looking forward to seeing you in Romania as well, as we keep reading the books meanwhile. If there are any questions from the public, just a second so I can ask, if anyone wants to ask a question.
I don't know. Do you hear me?
They're going to ask, and I'm going to ask the question because,
Okay. Considering in our generation that we are confronted with the compression of time, the feeling that time is compressed.
Considering in our generation we are confronting with the feeling that the time is constantly compressed.
At what point the gift of time becomes the curse of time?
At what point the gift of time becomes the curse of time?
Oh. The first part of that question was about how. About the time we live in?
Yeah, the time we live in, as we were talking before with the internet, breaking news, and this fast-paced world. We tend to have this feeling of the time is compressed. The time is lacking, running, and so on. And at what point
the gift of time becomes the curse of time.
At what point the gift of time, the gift that we have of time, becomes or can become a curse?
Well, I think it can become a curse at any point, but it's not to do with necessarily what's happening in the news, but how we experience it. I think the world is changing, but also how we experience the world is changing. I think the internet, and I spend too long on Twitter and stuff, and you get sucked into feelings of despair and stuff, but it's very easy sometimes, whatever's going on, to step away from that and then feel something completely completely different. There's been a lot of research done about, social media on mental states. And sometimes it's as simple as just stepping outside of your house and going for a walk and getting some perspective, or going into nature, going into a forest or something. So, but yeah, I mean, we're always blessed and we're always cursed. And when I'm in a bad place, I still go through patches where I think, oh, life's not worth living. But it's always that patch after when I'm so thankful that I am still alive. So I have to remember there's this other version of me. So, human history has known all kinds of horrible moments and horrible things, and each life is like that too. But things somehow, we've always survived, and there's always been some reason for hope at the end of it.
Thank you. Another question?
Okay.
I would like to know if he believes in incarnation.
Oh, it's a question from a lady. She would like to know if you believe in reincarnation.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not. I don't believe in anything. Not in a literal sense. But in one sense, we are. The fact that nothing ever dies, and we're all made from stars, and we're all sort of life reimagined. But I don't literally believe that we come back as. I'd like to believe that. My uncle believes this because he's a Buddhist, but I'm more skeptical.
See, another question?
Come on. What's he working on now?
What are you working on now?
What I'm working. Okay. Well, I've written a book called Notes on a Nervous Planet, which is about how the world is making us mad and how it affects our minds. So it's a book about mental health again, but it's more about. It's not about my mental health necessarily. It's about everything from social media to the news to how we sleep to how we eat to everything that affects our mental health. And that is coming out this summer in England in the English edition. I don't know. I think you'll have to wait till after Reasons to Stay Alive to see what happens in Romania. And I'm writing another children's book. A girl who...
Christmas one? Yeah.
No?
No? This time no? Okay.
No, it's about a girl who's got telepathic powers and she can hear the voices of animals. And what else am I doing? I'm starting a new adult novel, but it's so early, I can't even talk about it yet because it might not happen, but just starting.
Yeah, you're very productive. We have another question.
Next question.
He mentioned in Reasons to Stay Alive that he usually reads his Goodreads reviews from his readers. I was wondering if he's still doing that.
You mentioned that you read your reviews on Goodreads.
The reviews are good.
Yeah, for
Reasons to Stay Alive.
for Reasons to Stay Alive. Yeah, you mentioned this in
I didn't read the book. Reasons to Stay Alive.
Okay, so we have we have someone in the public that has read Reasons to Stay Alive in English, so you should be happy about this, and she says you mentioned that you read your reviews on Goodreads in the book. Do you keep doing this? Do you still read your reviews? Really?
Yeah, that's not good for your mental health. Like one star Amazon or Goodreads. Sometimes it's nice. It's nice to know what readers think of you, but I do it a bit less now. But it can be a bad habit. It's nice to hear from readers what they like about your work and stuff like that, but it becomes bad when you're too influenced by it. You know what I mean? And like Shakespeare only has a 3.7 on Goodreads. That's his average, 3.7. So I always remember that. I'm better than Shakespeare.